Nancy McClelland is an accountant. Is that what I'm hearing?
CPA, yes.
CPA. Oh, I like
No,
that.
not just an accountant, a CPA.
Well, there's something better, you know. I like, you know, especially this time of year. Aren't they busy usually this time of year?
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
Hello, this is Nancy.
hi, Nancy. Welcome to our coronavirus show. Ron Curtis Grace, David Rich, I'm Rusty Silver. How are you doing on this Friday night?
I'm doing okay. How are you guys doing? Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for coming on.
So how are you doing and what's going on in these unprecedented times?
Well, how am I doing is a question I'm not really excited about answering. I mean, I'm a small business accountant in Chicago, and I'm easily looking at 50% or more of my small business clients potentially going under because of all of this. So it's a pretty terrifying time. We're doing the best that we can to take care of them and make sure that doesn't happen, because when we come out the other side of this, I don't want the chains and the big companies with capital to swoop in and fill all the spaces where my beloved community organizations and bars and cafes and shops and restaurants are, you know. I want them to be here when we come out the other side.
Yeah, that would just be gross if we came out of this and it was nothing but corporations everywhere. Ugh.
Absolutely.
The only Italian food you could get would be Olive Garden. Ugh.
I feel like that's sort of what we're looking.
Because they can survive it. Yeah, oh my goodness. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons that there's been so much frustration with the Paycheck Protection Program, is that a lot of the companies that are applying for and receiving these funds are places that had access to capital. And I'm not saying they're not suffering. I'm not saying they're not challenged. But they had other places they could have gone.
They were fine.
Yeah.
Well, it's like
I can't blame them for applying because it was some very sloppy, rushed, poorly written legislation.
Right.
You know, there's actually a usual, when you apply for an SBA loan, usually there's a requirement that you have to actually certify that you don't have access to capital elsewhere. And this legislation, they actually removed that usual requirement, and they removed bank due diligence because they wanted to get these loans out to people fast. And so they pulled away all the work that the banks have to do to say, wow, these people really don't have anywhere else to go, and didn't require those larger companies to certify that was the case. The only thing you had to certify was that you have been affected by this, which, I mean, let's face it.
That's everybody.
Is there anybody that hasn't been? Yeah.
The protesters.
Yeah.
They're good.
Right.
Yeah, Nancy, this is Ron. Thank you for coming on. Yeah. When you say they removed it, now, I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a cynic, admittedly. And it seems like if you have those kinds of safeguards in place, and for this action they removed that, doesn't that just kind of, I was going to say leave a loophole, but more like a big gaping hole that you could drive a Mack truck through, and you end up with companies like, well, and what I'm glad to see is some of them are being shamed into returning the money. Shake Shack is returning their $10 million, and I think the one that incensed me more than any was Ruth's Holdings, the parent company of Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, having two individual subsidiaries each get a $10 million loan.
Yeah, that was crazy. Did you hear Cortez freak out over that in Congress?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm actually really frustrated because Potbelly was pressured to return it and refused. So
I didn't hear that. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty frustrating. I mean, I have to completely agree with you about the Mack truck, and the reason for that is, now I would have maybe defended this initially and said, oh well, you know, they were just trying to get the money out as soon as possible. You know, they're trying to. They're trying to get the money into the hands of the folks who need it, right? The thing is that we now are looking at a second round of funding. It was signed today. It's going to be, they're going to begin dispersing it at 10:30 a.m. on Monday, and they're anticipating it's only going to last 48 to 72 hours. That's how much demand there is for it. And, So they had an opportunity here to change it. They had an opportunity to remove these loopholes that they created, and they didn't. Knowing how much frustration there has been, knowing, there are plenty of politicians who are posturing and saying, well, that's not what we meant. Well, if that's not what you meant,
then why write it?
That's what words are for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
to express what you mean to other people.
Yes. So there are some really specific areas here. I mean, the most important one, I would think, is that the existing Small Business Administration definition of what a small business is, it's a lot bigger than you'd expect. I'm kind of excited to tell you some of this and have you gasp and moan.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. We're all ears on this.
All right. So if you want a comprehensive list, you can Google SBA, as in Small Business Administration, NAICS, which stands for North American Industry Classification System, and size standards. SBA, NAICS size standards. You'll get a comprehensive list of everything that qualifies as a small business according to SBA. And this is before coronavirus. Okay, this is just what a small business is. They have two different definitions: how many employees you have, and what your receipts are, your actual dollars that you bring in, not your gross profit, but your receipts that you're bringing in. And it changes depending on what kind of industry you're in. So, for example, publishers and manufacturers are defined by how many employees they have. If you have 1,000 to 1,500 employees, you are a small business.
Wow.
Now, I don't know about you, but I do not have any clients who have over 1,000 employees.
I thought it was 500. Okay.
Yeah, I thought the number was 500.
No.
Somebody said 500
the
earlier.
500, yeah, no, the 500 is something that was written into this legislation saying the real words there say something like you need to fit the existing SBA definition or have 500 workers or fewer.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
So this SBA definition. And then so another example would be like a gross receipts example. If you are a movie theater and you bring in $41.5 million of receipts a year or lower, you're considered a small business.
Oh,
Wow.
Say
Right?
what?
Then I'm a nano business. I'm like a quantum. I'm a quantum business.
she did say we would gasp and moan.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I'm going to rebrand and say I don't do small business accounting. I do nano business accounting. So the thing is that for restaurants, that range is between $8 million and $41.5 million. But for most quick serve restaurants, it would be $12 million. That would be defined as small. So the way that this was written is it said the existing SBA definition. So a restaurant, quick serve, $12 million of receipts, or 500 or fewer workers, right? Right. That's the definition. And then this particular legislation came along, and it said, but we're going to make an exemption. We're going to say that if your NAICS code begins with 72,
72 or 73.
That means you're an accommodation, which is like a hotel, or food services and drinking places. Both of those begin with 72. So for hotels, $35 million is already defined as $35 million of receipts is defined as small. Now, that's already pretty big, right? But then they removed these affiliation rules for accommodation and food services. They said small refers to each location, regardless of how many locations you own. So each of these locations can have up to $35 million of receipts if you're a hotel and $12 million if you're a restaurant or a bar, and you're still small.
Each location.
And you can have each location.
Wow.
Yeah,
Right.
So not the corporation itself, not the sum total of all the corporation's profits.
No, that's each location, $35 million of receipts for a hotel, $12 million for restaurants, and each one gets to apply separately. And the maximum that you can apply for is $10 million, and it's calculated based on 2.5 times your average monthly payroll, which would mean each of these places that would get the max has an average monthly payroll of at least $4 million.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what you're looking at, but that is not a small business.
This is like just nothing compared to Ma and Pa's type of restaurant you're looking at in the smaller part of Lake County that has had a shop there for 3 or 4 decades with minimal amounts of workers. This is no relation to what a small business should be.
You are making my point perfectly.
And then to add to that,
nobody in their right mind would think that these are small businesses. And then, yes, to add to that, you can apply for as many of these locations as you want if you're a hotel, restaurant, or drinking place. So they had an opportunity to change this in the second round, and they didn't. Now, maybe that was because they were trying to be as quick as possible. You know, we can give them the benefit of the doubt. But between that and removing the usual SBA requirement that you have to certify that you don't have access to capital elsewhere, and removing the bank due diligence, it's really hard to imagine that this was really supposed to be targeted at the mom and pops that we're thinking of.
No.
And even with the state, now that's the federal. With the state, you've got the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. They launched a hospitality emergency grant program.
Have you seen the list?
Yeah. $14 million is what they were awarding. As of April 17th, they'd gotten 12,000 applications, awarded 708 businesses. 466 were approved for funding, and as of the 17th, they had funded a little over $6 million. Now, I took a look just to focus on Lake County, and I'm seeing things like Residence Inn, Chicago Deerfield, Comfort Suites, Baymont Inn and Suites, and you see franchises.
Embassy Suites.
Yeah, Embassy Suites
was one of them.
Yeah.
And honestly, you can just count the number of subways. It was a joke that I was making with one of my clients. She was just like, oh, look, Subway, 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 Subway. Oh, there's one I recognize. Look, it's a little place down the street. Subway, Subway, Subway.
In Cook County, I counted about 12.5 Subways.
Yeah, but those are mostly franchised, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they're privately...
Yeah,
but that's company-owned as well.
I would love to talk about the franchises. So this is an argument that I've been having with some of my colleagues that I see the point when you say, look, a franchise is often owned by a mom and a pop, right? Yes. And they have employees, and they should be entitled to these funds. Okay, I agree. There are a couple of problems, however. One of them is one person, one mom and pop, can own 20 of these.
Exactly.
Right? So there's a problem. Nobody was looking at how many of these. It's the same kind of thing with the affiliation rules. There were no affiliation rules for the Illinois Hospitality Grant. So there was no issue with somebody who potentially owned many of these as an investor and not as a mom or pop. So that's one problem. Another problem is all of these franchises are getting help from the companies that they are paying these exorbitantly high franchise fees to, right? Yeah. The parent companies.
True.
And those parent companies say, we want to keep getting our franchise fees. We're not going to let up on that. And in order to do that, we need to provide support from our lawyers and our accountants and our consultants to apply for these the Illinois Hospitality Grant, the PPP, et cetera. We're going to apply for these on behalf of our franchise owners.
Right.
And so they're getting a kind of support that a mom and pop isn't. So does it mean they're not entitled to it? No, but it is pretty disappointing.
It could be, it could be structured. It could be structured differently. So, what are what are the ones that you, me, and any other rational person would consider to be a mom and pop place? What are they getting? You're privately owned one restaurant. One guy owns one restaurant. What's he getting?
Yeah. So what I'm seeing across my clients is that most of them are requesting approximately $20,000 to $50,000. There are some requesting less, but almost all of my clients who applied are requesting in the $20,000 to $50,000. This is really small potatoes.
Yeah, it is. And
as a result, you ended up with a situation where, the soundbite that you keep hearing is, well, come on, 74% of these loans went to small businesses, right? but only 17% of the dollars went to small businesses.
Two totally different figures there, yes.
Yeah. And it's because of what you were just saying. You know, what is an actual small, you know, one of my clients in Logan Square, you know, my cafes, my restaurants, my little retail shops, my bookstore, you know, my wine distribution company. I mean, there's some folks who got it. And what are they asking for? I mean, you know, my little retail shop got $36,000, and we were over the moon about it for $36,000. I mean, $36,000 is going to pay her staff for 2 months. This is amazing. But what's $36,000 compared to $5.5 million, to $10 million, to $20 million? It's chump change to these big ones.
Yeah. Well, Nancy, what would be your advice to any small business owners that might be listening to our program now?
That is a great question. I do have some advice about the PPP and about grants and about things like the, you know, Chicago Resiliency Fund is out there. You know, LISC is offering grants. There are grants that are targeted to specific industries, artists and restaurant industry, et cetera. Keep looking for those. Keep applying for those things. Get your ducks in order and, you know, find a lender and apply for PPP. But recognize that you're going to have to do a lot more than just look for money. You need to research alternative structures for your business, because even if this stay-at-home is lifted, people are going to be scared to go out.
Yeah,
it's not going to go back to normal, right? So research alternatives. Look, talk to your other friends who own small businesses. You know, go online and try to find a small business support group if you're not already in one, and ask the other business owners what they're doing. I have seen some amazing creativity among my clients where I'm like, go for it. So one example is, if you're a restaurant, instead of paying Grubhub or Caviar or, you know, Uber Eats to do your deliveries, instead pay your staff to do those deliveries. That's a really good way to keep them safe, because they can socially distance themselves, have contactless delivery, and make some money in the meantime. So that's one option. I have some restaurants that are considering moving to a 100% pickup window or curbside model, even after this is all over, staying that way, because it might be years before we get back to quote unquote normal.
And you could probably do that with a smaller staff too.
Yeah, but I thought the point of the loans was to avoid firing your staff.
Which is why I think that the idea of having staff do the deliveries and also paying your staff, you don't have to necessarily pay your staff to do the job that they were doing before. If you don't have that kind of business, then pay your staff to do some of this brainstorming for you. You can pay them to work at home and research new sales channels. Say, hey, look, your job is on the line, because if this business closes permanently, I'm not going to have any money to pay you. So help me get creative. Go out there, find new sales channels, coordinate with other businesses, get in touch with other companies that you know might be having problems, and say, hey, guys, let's go in together and come up with a neat idea, maybe putting together care packages from 4 different businesses, and then going with like I have a client that is a co-op bike delivery service, right? Hire them to do the deliveries. Yeah. Start your own business or make a branch of your business that is doing the kinds of things that are in demand right now. You're going to have to get creative, because business isn't going to go back to usual for a long time. So that's one of my biggest suggestions. And another suggestion that is really big, you got to look at your cash flow. If you're the kind of person who beforehand was just putting receipts in a shoebox and giving them to your accountant at the end of the year to file your tax return, maybe now is a really good time to take some free QuickBooks classes or something like that, you know, or Xero, which is another popular accounting system, and get that info in there so that you can start projecting how much am I going to need each month, bare minimum,
Nancy,
to get through this.
I'm sure it's obvious that one session with you is not going to be enough. And particularly with this new round of funding, before we let you go, how can people get in touch with you? Because I found you through Block Club Chicago. So how can people get in touch with you? And we would love to have you back.
Oh, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. It's great talking with you, and I'm really glad that you're doing the good work to get this information out where people need it the most. There's a lot of misinformation out there. I write an award-winning blog at my website, which is www.thedancingaccountant.com. That's
I love it.
That's
Go ahead.
because I am a dancer and I am an accountant.
All right.
And so thedancingaccountant.com, click on the blog there, and every day I'm posting numerous articles on there with all sorts of information that I hope is helpful to people, not just for my clients, but all over.
Well,
and stay safe. You know.
Are you on
protect
Facebook?
Yourself, protect your employees. Protect your families.
Are you on Facebook, Nancy?
I am on Facebook. I have a page there. It's at Nancy the Dancing Accountant.
All right. We will look for the Dancing Accountant.
Yeah, Nancy,
Yeah.
you're in demand. We're going to have you on again maybe next week.
Yeah, we've got to have you back.
You're so kind. Thank you for saying that. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks so much, Nancy.
Have a good evening. Be well.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, you be well too. Stay safe, everyone. Wear your mask.
Okay.
She's good. I like that. Yeah. You know, we've had what? Somebody that was a musician. Was that Karen that's dancing in the kitchen? Now we got a dancing accountant?
Karen Shook, yeah.
Oh, Karen Shook. I'm sorry.
Almost every day you can see a video of her like coming swinging.
It just dawned on me, you know, you had the big TV show, The Masked Singer. Now you've got The Masked Accountant.
Wow, crazy.
The Masked Radio
I
Host.
guess masked everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, we keep finding these. I don't know where we get these. That was good. I got to give you credit, Ron, for this one.
Yeah, she was good.
Yeah, so we'll take a break. We'll come back.